On this episode of the Katie Halper Show, we are joined by Chris Cobb, an artist and writer who spearheaded the effort to get New York City to recognize the site of a former slave market on Wall Street with a plaque. We're also joined by Ted Alexandro, a comedian and Occupy Wall Street activist who is at the unveiling. We got him right before he leaves for a 30-city tour with stand-up comedian Jim Gaffigan. Also joining us is Desiree Burch, the performance artist and comedian whose show Tar Baby is on its way to Edinburgh. Nate Silver of 538 comes into the studio to talk about a study that finds that Black Americans are killed at 12 times the rate of people in other developed countries. You can listen to The Katie Halper Show every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on FwdRad.io or 99.5 FM. You can also find us on SoundCloud and on Tumblr at thekatiehalpershow.tumblr.com. And on the next episode of The Katie Halper Show, we'll be joined by Johan Hari, author of Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs, and the political comedian Justin Williams. I'm Katie Halper. This is the Katie Halper Show.
Yes. And.
Yes, and. Thank you. That's an improv joke for all the people out there. Hi, everyone. How's it going? We have a full house.
There are more people in this room
than in the Republican. No. Yes, and. Than in the Republican race?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Desiree Burch is here, looking so ecstatic. If you could see her face,
yeah,
it's like her cheeks are knocking into the walls.
Yeah, sideways though.
Sideways,
just way far out.
Right, not vertically. Not the vertical walls, which we call ceilings, but not everyone accepts that linear patriarchal.
Yeah,
exactly,
absolutely.
Hi, Desiree. How are you?
I'm all right. Well, yeah, we're gonna say I'm all right.
We're gonna say you're all right.
Yeah.
Yes. Our perspiration suggests something else, but our attitude.
It's tropical.
We are very tropical, yes. We were playing some Brazilian music.
All of the surroundings, which suggests building.
But if we're going to do some EMDR therapy, and we're going to get there. Desiree Burch is an actress, solo performer, comedian, and she's going to be talking to us about her show, Tar Baby. It's spanking renewed. Would you say that?
I don't even know when one would say that, but
you've done it before, but you're bringing it now.
It has evolved.
It has evolved. Okay, so it's an evolved Tar Baby.
Yes,
it's like a tar toddler by now.
Exactly.
Okay.
And rompers and doing creative things.
Nice.
Talking back.
Awesome. Ted, I see you laughing. Don't hold it in. Thank you. Or are you just one of those people who doesn't laugh out loud?
No, I do.
Oh, okay. Just not on radio. Not on radio.
But we're jumping the queue.
I know we're jumping. You're right. I'm with the most respect. I love how all comedians are totally terrible people, except for the ones who are with me. And I like that they're not terrible, but when you're doing radio, I kind of wish you guys were more obnoxious. Yeah. This has become a motif. Gabe, very politely looks away when he's about to laugh.
I cover my mouth.
You cover your mouth.
I'm very polite.
You're very polite.
Yeah, demure.
Demure. You're a demure motivator?
Well, I encourage.
You encourage, right.
More visually than...
More visually, right. Which is cool, because radio is a very visual medium.
Right, to have a very visual, physical comedian on your show as your sidekick is kind of... It's a unique way to do things.
Until I've been introduced,
you're right.
I feel like I don't exist.
Are you checking your male privilege? Why male privilege
I'm checking all of my privilege.
All of it, okay, good. Yeah. This is Ted Alexandro.
Well, we jumped to the queue.
I know, but I'm going...
It's okay? All right. No.
I'm actually inverting it on purpose.
Let's do it.
This whole thing is like Memento, the radio show, by the way. So this is Ted Alexandro.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Ted. You may have heard of him. Comedian, activist, Occupy Wall Street activist, going on a 30-city tour with Jim Gaffigan this summer.
That's right.
Hashtag NBD. And we have another guy who's also kind of NBD, which is Chris Cobb. Chris Cobb is kind of responsible for the fact that there is now a plaque recognizing the existence of a slave market on Wall Street.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's correct. Okay, good.
Part of why I think Ted is a little bit nervous is because he got his hair done just for this.
Oh, I thought you just had your makeup done. You guys aren't live in studio, but Ted is very sun-kissed right now.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But you did your hair, too. What did you do? Frosted tips?
No, I just set the old shear on number 3, and then I go to town, everything from the neck up.
Oh, a number 3 day.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, Gabe, do you ever shear yourself?
Like a lamb. I go to the hair cutter and I go, can I just have 3 inches off all over?
All over your body?
Yeah, all over my body.
Right.
Furry man. And
you couldn't tell because they do such a good job that they absolutely take it off. You don't see any fur.
I look hydrodynamic right now. Smooth. Like a baby porpoise.
Tar baby porpoise.
Yeah, it's a tar toddler now.
A tar tot. You're right. Thank you for reminding me.
Speaking back.
All right. Back. Oh, my God. Reggie, hello.
Hello.
Gabe, it's your bromance partner.
I know. He didn't have a microphone. I didn't want to...
Here, Reggie, say hello. You want to take my mic for the entire show?
Yeah, I do, actually. Hello.
Hi, thanks.
Reggie Johnson on the engineering keyboards, tickling the ivories of sound, and
Looking good, right?
and of course with my main man. Can't believe I just said that. My main man, Dave Pacheco.
Howdy, everybody. It's me, Gabe Pacheco.
Howdy, partner. Camille is here. Say hello.
Hello.
Camille is our Sunkissed intern. We're being sponsored by Sunkissed today. Guys, okay, this is the Katie Halper Show. We're talking about some really important stories. We also have Nate Silver, the best-selling author, coming in later, so you're going to want to stick around.
I want to hear more about this
plaque.
plaque.
We're going to go there. Okay,
Plaque?
we're getting to the plaque.
Okay.
We're going to floss and get to the plaque. Thank you. You're welcome, Dad. Thank you. I hope you're listening, because that was for you and everyone else. Before we get into the plaque discussion, it's a day of the week, so that means we have what? A Trump date, a Trump update.
We need to know where he's at.
We need to know where he's at. Now, good friend of the show, Sam Alkoff. You may have heard of the show he works at. It's called Democracy Now!, not to be confused with Oligarchy Yesterday, which is where Gabe used to intern, I believe. He told me that there is a state park named after Donald Trump. Did you guys know this?
Is it in New York?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like in Putnam, Westchester. I think that we should unname it, like take his name off of it.
Unname my park.
Oh my God, you prepared for the show.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Toni Braxton, thank you. I was about to call her Toni Morrison, but that's not racist, though, because there are only two women who I know who are famous who are Tony something.
Then there's Tony.
That's right.
Right,
Three
but
different spellings.
right.
Reggie constantly snipes my references from the corner. I love it.
My heart is broken by the fact that there's a state park named after Donald Trump. So I was thinking we could name it after like a Mexican. Who do you want to name it? We could name it after Gabe Pacheco.
Well, I
Mexican.
I don't know if I've accomplished anything yet to get it.
As opposed to Trump.
Yes, good call.
You know
Good call.
what? Maybe I've done more.
What about Dolores Huerta? We could name it after her.
Oh my gosh, yeah, she'd be the best, man. She doesn't get enough recognition.
She doesn't. It's all Cesar Chavez.
Cesar Chavez gets it all.
We could name it after Joan Baez. A wonderful.
She's an Armenian, though, I think.
Mexa-Irish, I thought.
No, she's Mexican.
You're thinking of the Kardashians, who often get
gonna
confused with the
wiki
Baez
that.
family.
She
Definitely.
was born in Staten Island, but her heritage is Mexican.
And Irish. She's Irish-Mexican.
And Irish.
She's a quesadilla
All right.
with potatoes. Speaking of things in New York that are named after terrible things and involve the mistakes of awful rich white men. How's that for a segue?
Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here all week. I'm not. I'm here all show. A former slave market was finally recognized, thanks in large part to the work of one of our first guests. If you walk around the city, there are plaques, historical markers, signs informing tourists and New Yorkers alike of the important heritage and pedigree of our city, like where President George Washington slept, or here you can find the Starbucks bathroom open to the public that is not totally disgusting, right?
Or
You know
like
those
the
markers?
Seinfeld diner.
Right, the Seinfeld diner, right? But one of the things that doesn't really get acknowledged quite as much as things like Seinfeld diners is the thing like sites of slavery. But some people did something about that, and they put a marker on Wall Street acknowledging New York's municipal slave market. And the plaque starts, on Wall Street between Pearl and Water Streets, a market that auctioned enslaved people of African ancestry was established by a common council law on November 30th, 1711. This slave market was in use until 1762. Brooklyn-based writer and artist and activist Christopher Cobb spearheaded the call for the plaque. And Ted Alexandro, the comedian and activist who's here with us too, was there.
I was present, yeah, and Chris is a very humble man, but I'm not going to say single-handedly because he worked with Jumaane Williams and many people, but he was very dogged in his pursuit of having this sign put up on Wall Street to mark the slave trade that took place there. So I'm really impressed, and that's why I went out to show my respect to Chris and all the people who worked hard to get that sign up.
And how did this idea come to you, Chris?
Well, it's kind of hard to explain in a comedy context.
We'll do the work for you.
We got dad jokes and dad puns.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean,
Nice.
if you guys can handle that end,
Yeah.
I can kind of talk a little
Sure.
bit about
For
the
sure.
history.
And we'll just lay a laugh track over it.
Okay,
afterwards.
yeah,
It'll be
sure.
great for the podcast.
I wanted to say, too, that I found that during this process that artists tend to be equipped with more tools than just activists or, say, scholars. And, same with comedians, because they have a lot of different methodologies to talk about things and culture without it being, like, slapped down or ignored. You're not going to lose your job if you bring something like this up, And so,
Because you already don't have one. If you're
right,
not.
you don't have, right, comedians, artists, they have that in common.
How did you even realize it existed?
I write arts and culture articles for a few different publications, and I came across it in my research. And I started talking to some Occupy activists I knew, and they didn't know much about it. And I realized it had been like 300 years since that market had been established, and nobody put up any kind of marker there. It just kind of seemed like a ridiculous oversight.
How do you view the significance of symbolic gesture? Although this isn't just symbolic, right? Because it's a plaque, but it's also actually educational, right? And it's going to raise people's awareness about it. What do you think of something like reparations, though? Was that? Sorry, too soon for reparations? That was just a cough. I thought you were wheezing with emotion.
That was just a cough.
Sorry, sometimes, like Freud said, it's just a cough.
Sometimes a cough is just a cough.
Right.
Yeah,
but you never know with Reggie, man. You never
I know. That's probably why. I was like, what is he trying to communicate to me? Sneaky Reggie.
We pass these signs all the time or these monuments, but you don't realize the genesis of it, because it wasn't just you made a phone call and they said, sure, we'll put that sign up about the slave market. It was a process of a few years, right?
Yeah, it was several years. Just kind of went through the city government and city council bureaucracy from agency to agency. But the mayor became aware of it apparently like in March or April, and that's when it started to actually look like it was going to crystallize. And so that's when the new meaning to executive decision came about. And sure enough, just a couple months later, boom, it was done.
What were some of the first steps that you took to really bring it together?
I wouldn't want to say anything bad about Occupy Wall Street, but a lot of people were not equipped with the resources necessary to approach the city. And so I had to kind of take it out of the Occupy context. I thought it would be also disrespectful or almost arrogant of like an individual activist, especially a white activist, to suddenly claim he knew everything about this culture that he doesn't know.
Like, let me tell you what happened to you people.
Right. It's called white-splaining. I've learned.
Right. Yeah. I hope someone white didn't explain that to you.
I'm telling you. So I thought the best way to cover my personal ass was to get more people involved to spread the blame around.
Right.
So, and I thought, the best people to blame would be the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture, because if they write the text, nobody can say I'm a bad person, right? So they could, but they'd have to say the Schomburg is bad too.
They would have, and there would be a Schomburg Shonda, if you will.
Okay, well, I'm telling you.
Shame in Yiddish. Desiree, don't hold it in. She's laughing. I want you to know when I say don't hold it in, it's not that they're not laughing. You may think it's not worthy of their laughter, but they, for whatever reason, guilt, disbelief, are. I just want you to know. The
director of the Schomburg, his name is Dr. Khalil Gibran Muhammad. I didn't know he was, the grandson of Elijah Muhammad?
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, well...
The prophet, the honorable?
Does he know that there's a Schomburg is the name? He's okay with that?
If you were in the same room with Dr. Khalil Gibran Muhammad, you would think, this man smells really clean. He dresses in three-piece suits. He has style. His shoes are shiny.
Okay, yeah.
You see a lot of directors of organizations. They don't have attention. There's no attention to detail.
Right.
Right.
You're
but this is a man who's very conscious of his.
He doesn't wear the lefty, scholarly activist. Like, I will not bathe in solidarity with people who are denied clean water.
When the mayor actually did come out for the unveiling ceremony, ironically, mayor himself was the second most clean man I've ever smelled in my life.
After who?
And I thought, after Khalil Gibran Muhammad.
Wow, so you don't throw those labels around later.
But he was with his wife, too. And
the cleanest smelling of them all.
Well, she must have a hand in this cleanliness thing with the mayor.
Right.
Gotta think.
It always starts at the top.
It always starts. Behind every clean man is a very powerful woman who used to only date women.
With the loofah.
She did.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
I like that Bill de Blasio is a spinner, by the way. I want a mayor who has that power. Talk about executive power.
That's right.
That's some executive power, right? Speaking of which, this is First Lady of New York City, Chirlane McCray, the wife of Bill de Blasio, speaking at the dedication of the plaque.
How many New Yorkers know that our city's slave market was rivaled only by the slave market in Charleston, South Carolina? And how many New Yorkers know there were years when up to 20% of city residents were slaves? So let us remember today and every day that the buying and selling of a people for profit and material gain took place right here. Let us remember that the roots of slavery run deep. Although slavery was abolished 150 years ago, those roots have fueled income inequality, discrimination, and segregation. Many of the thorny issues which continue to plague us today. Nothing we can do can reverse the pain or change our city's history. But if we are to heal and make true progress, we must acknowledge what has happened here.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much. You're going to have to come back. Where can people find you online?
I'm not. I don't have a website like Ted Alexandro.
So they'll just run into you.
What about on Instagram at Brooklynonian?
Oh yeah, I have a Brooklynonian.
Brooklynonian, and that's on Twitter and Instagram.
I mean, that's great, man. Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you for helping bring some of our history in the city to life and back to, well, not bringing the market back to life, but sort of bringing it back into the public eye so that we see.
It's tricky to make it funny, yeah.
Well, I'm literally was a history major. I'm just saying that I love
we
that.
We did find out it's his favorite subject. Really, congratulations. And this whole city thanks you. And the state, the country, the nation. You're a great patriot. And we were talking with Chris Cobb and Ted Alexandro. Both of them were present at the dedication of the slave market on Wall Street that Chris helped bring into existence. Ted was there to support him. Ted's also a major activist, Wall Street activist, Occupy Wall Street activist, not like a stockbroker.
That's right.
Occupy Wall Street, not pro Wall Street.
He's like not the Gordon Gekko of stand-up.
Yes, he's often been called that, though, at least in my mind. And we are so excited to be joined live in studio by Desiree Burch.
Hey.
A solo performer, hilarious comedian. I've performed with her. I've laughed so hard at her. She has a show. So. Thank you. She also laughed at herself as well.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good stuff, right? It's awesome stuff. She has a show, Tar Baby, and it's part of the Edinburgh Festival.
The East to Edinburgh Festival.
East to Edinburgh Festival. So I want to talk about comedy, politics, race, racism, the process with both of you guys.
Cool.
But before we do that, I thought we could actually play some of your content so our listeners get a sense of what... I'm gonna say comedic geniuses. I'm just gonna go out there and say that. Gabe, do you sanction that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. First, we're going to start with a clip from Ted Alexandro talking about the hilarious subject that is police brutality. Mm-hmm. Where is this, by the way?
Downtown, the West Village, shortly after the Eric Garner case.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Police brutality came to the fore. I don't think there was necessarily a rise in it. I think all of a sudden now we all have cameras in our pockets. It's not like, wow, the police really had a crazy year. It's like, maybe this has been happening a while, but we didn't know about it. And that's part of the disconnect. People think, it doesn't happen to me, so it can't be true. Just because you haven't experienced something doesn't mean that it's not real. Think of police brutality like a Tyler Perry movie. You may have never seen one. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. You're not the intended audience. Same with police brutality. And the other part of the equation, even more importantly, I think, is this implication that we're not allowed to talk about the police. We're not allowed to discuss how they're doing. You see cars in New York City all over the place. Phone numbers on the back. How's my driving? You can just pick up, I don't like that guy's driving. But somehow we're not allowed to say, it seems like the cops have been killing a lot of black people. I don't know what the answers are other than talking, talking out loud sometimes. Sometimes into a microphone, sometimes not. And feeling it. Because it's uncomfortable, right? You even feel it here now. Even talking about police brutality is uncomfortable. But at least it's not police brutality. Imagine what Ben was feeling. It's better than that. Maybe that should be the new program. The cops just come up and talk to black people about police brutality. Black people are like, this is really uncomfortable. Yeah, but we have scaled back.
That was Ted Alexandro making police brutality funny. And yet, at the same time, I think doing what is a comedian's job, ultimately, hopefully, which is making something very, very serious funny, but also not trivializing it or making light of it. And we'll talk more about how you do that. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of what struck me about that, is that you're not dismissing it, you're taking it seriously, and you're also mocking the people, but not the people who are at the receiving end of police brutality. So,
right.
And then another clip that I would like to play for you guys now is from Desiree Burch's show, Tar Baby, which also deals with a serious issue of racism. and manages to do it in a way that's neither dismissive nor disrespectful nor trivializing, but is funny. Just to set it up, this is her talking about auditioning for a play.
A webisode.
A webisode,
even better.
A student film webisode.
Yes.
And you play
some black character they wrote in at the last minute.
A random black person, like what Donald Trump would call one of the blacks. Believe,
exactly.
Right? What's her name?
LaQuanvia is in the show.
Is her name. And you have to say, hold the elevator, and you try it many ways, right? And they're not picking up what you're putting down, so to speak, right?
Yeah, this is basically a sort of a dramatization of what happened in there. You know, I hyper, blackified the name and hyper trivialized the material because that was essentially my experience with the process.
Got it. So you did onto the process what the process had done to you.
Yeah.
That's justice, my friend. Okay, so
gotta get it somehow.
You do, exactly. So while we wait for reparations. Okay, so we're going to play that clip now.
And then one of them, the hipster with the facial hair made of irony, he gives me the actual piece of direction that they all wanted to give me by the time I walked in the door. He says, could you do it a little bit more urban? Okay. Hold the elevator, forget about it! No, do it more street. Do it like the Clumps. None of the things he's saying actually go together. Like, does he want me to do it like I've got tiger paws and thug life tattooed on my titties? Or does he want me to do it like I live in a 5-room tenement with 100 different people from 1,000 different countries? Or does he want me to do it like I'm in a bad Eddie Murphy movie where everyone's sitting around on the porch eating chicken fried steak and chicken fingers and their own fingers because they're too obese to move? They all do mean the same thing. They mean black. To someone who has no idea what that means. He means do it more black because I'm not being black enough. And then there's this exchanged look of, and yeah, I got it. Black it up. I say it. Hold the elevator. I done told y'all to hold that elevator. Bitch, I don't know why you ain't hold that elevator for me. Here, hold my baby. I'm a cutter, bitch. Elevator Jesus. Elevator Jesus. Miss Scarlett, I don't know nothing about holding no elevator. I guess a black man can't get nobody to hold an elevator for him when he needs it. Get on the elevator. Get on the...
Okay, that was Desiree Burch from Tar Baby. Pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I guess that's got to be kind of insane to watch because I just do it and kind of like clown around, but everyone's like, yes, no.
Right. It's one of those like you laugh instead of cry things, perhaps?
Yeah, right? It's the like, oh, I'm laughing. Oh my God, it's so screwed up that I'm laughing, but also it's so screwed up.
Right. So can you guys talk a little bit about your process, about how you deal with these serious things? How you came to be kind of politically conscious comedians. Did this come after your interest in comedy and performing? Did it come before? What's the relationship between those two things for you guys?
Becoming more politicized as an artist or a comedian, I think it comes out of the practice of comedy because you are essentially searching for truth to communicate to people. Obviously, if you have certain experiences, you're going to talk about them. I have a lot of intersectionality, as I guess they like to call it. So I talk about those experiences because there aren't necessarily a lot of those voices out there at this time. They're becoming more so. But I think that is talking about those things does become a political act when they are things that are taboo for whatever reason. And I have a kind of like, I need to touch it. Why isn't everybody ignoring it? Kind of thing. And so I think that it is a function of being a comic and kind of digging deeper.
And you mentioned intersectionality. So you're talking about the Kim Crenshawian, if you will, idea of having kind of multiple identities and at the intersection of race, gender, class, as opposed to just being a black person, right?
A black, as Donald Trump would
respectfully say. And of course, he has his great relationship with the blacks.
With the blacks.
As he himself noted.
Yeah, of
about
course.
himself.
Well, the Mexicans are going to beat the blacks in voting for him this year, apparently.
We don't know. There's going to be a Trump off. There's going to be an ethnic Trump vote off. We don't know who he's going to claim first. Actually, our next guest could talk about that. We have who we're going to have in studio. I'm not going to give it away, except listeners already know. It may or may not be. It may or may not be Nate Silver. But I just realized that, like, wow, I didn't even think of the ethnic Trump off that we can do. He's going to break it down. He's got a lot of, I believe Ali G calls them Zen diagrams. Ted, what about you? How do you come at this? Is it comedy before politics, politics before comedy?
I think Occupy Wall Street for me was kind of the awakening when I started participating more in, the movement, just more and more people having these conversations out in the open. So kind of an education for me, just kind of paying more attention, reading more, watching the right things, reading the right things, just being in the right communities. So for me, first and foremost, it's an education. Then it's the decision, do I incorporate that into my comedy or not? Because it's very easy not to. Mm-hmm. But as an artist, I think it's important that the conversations that we're having in real life should make their way to the stage if you can do it in a funny way. And I don't like to be heavy-handed or dogmatic. But I do, first I kind of have to work through the anger, and then if I can get to the funny, then I'll bring it to the stage.
Right. Mm. That's really interesting because I think that the left is way funnier. I'm obviously biased, but I think the left is way funnier than the right, and I think a big reason that's true is because of empathy. Yeah. I think there's like a somewhat controlled experiment with Dennis Miller, who used to be funny, then he became conservative, and now whenever I listen to him, he's angry, but not in a kind of justice-oriented way or a empathetic way. It's more like, wow, what did a woman or a black person do to you, like in your early childhood that you're dealing with and really angry about in a way that makes me really uncomfortable.
He's not angry with us. He's angry alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or he's angry at us.
At us,
right?
yeah.
But so I think that's true. I think that's why you don't have someone on the right, like you don't have a right-wing Robin Williams. I don't think you ever will. Yeah. I'm being honest. Like they have talk radio because that's short and not nuanced. And besides this talk radio, which is very nuanced and long form. But I want to bring in our next guest. Really excited to have him on the show, making his debut. All of our guests are making their debut on the Katie Halper Show, and that may be because we are turning a month old today. Oh, by the way, happy birthday, guys! Everyone,
congratulations!
Thank you, Gabe, Reggie, Camille. It's all of our birthdays here, and you guys are the party favors.
Nice.
Okay?
Feels good.
Who's the pinata?
Doesn't it feel good to pay less? Right? Am I right?
Yeah, always does.
We are joined now by the man who made math sexy. I believe that's going to go on your tombstone. Nate Silver of 538, the author of the best-selling book.
The Signal and the Noise.
Yeah, but I was going to say, is that coming out in a some?
It's out in paperback. It's out in audiobook. So there's no promotional opportunity whatsoever.
Well, I'm actually doing a choreo poem about it. I don't know if you know about this, but I'm going to do a choreographed poem, interpretive spoken word thing, where I summarize the book. I talked to
I read like a Cliff Notes version of my book.
How was it?
It's pretty good. I have to say, right? Like if I were someone, I would buy the Cliff Notes version.
If you were someone, not a lazy
college student with a lot to do.
Right. College student. You were a college student with a lot to do at one point, right?
I was lazier than you might expect.
Really? You heard it here first, guys. This is some major investigative journalism. But Nate, you have a really interesting article that relates, sadly, to what we're talking about today. We are talking about racism because it's a Wednesday, and it's the United States. You have an article on your site, 538. It's titled, Black Americans are killed at 12 times the rate of people in other developed countries. If you compare the U.S. with other countries, the numbers aren't terrible, right? It's when you compare the U.S. with countries we would consider comparable.
Well, this was, we wrote this in the wake of the Charleston shootings, and we always think as a newsroom about are you too far zoomed in, are you too far zoomed out, right? Is the story that we have expertise to cover or not? But there was a lot of dialogue about mass shootings in the U.S., which I thought kind of missed the point for two reasons. One being that as tragic as mass shootings are, they represent a tiny fraction of the number of homicides that occur in the United States every day. But also, the experience lived, I could say this as a white person, right? But the experience lived by white people in the U.S. is totally different than that by black people in particular. If you're a white person, your chance of getting murdered every year is 2.5 out of 10,000, and that's similar to Finland, Chile, Israel. If you're a black person, it's 19.4.
Wow.
So almost 8 times higher. That's more like developing countries that are war zones even, like Myanmar, or Rwanda, Mexico, Brazil, Nigeria, places where they have vast
disorder. And so to me, that stat was just so striking that I thought this was a case where, even being kind of zoomed out, that was a data point that helped to inform the discussion.
So basically, it's like when you are a black person living in America, it's like being a person living in Rwanda.
In terms of the risk of being a victim of a homicide, yes. I don't want to say that obviously living conditions are more difficult for some people than others.
Right. And there's intersectionality, right? So there's issues of class and access, education, all that, right?
Absolutely, right. And so, again, we're not trying to get into the causes behind this, but just when you have a difference that's striking, to me that was eye-opening, really. Even though I know people know that kind of in one sense. Every now and then you come across a stat where it just...
totally drives it home.
I have a question about the statistics, too. Was that a snapshot of 2015 across the board with these countries? Are the conditions as bad now as they've always been, or has it gotten worse to be black in the United States?
So this data was from, I think, 2011 or 2012 when the UN did a report and tried to estimate in every country around the globe what the risk of being a homicide victim was every year. So they're a couple of years old. Over the long run, things have gotten a little better. The crime rate is down from what it was in the 1990s, early 1990s, for example. The funny thing was people got all incensed about crime when Bill Clinton was president, when it was already going down during his presidency. So the data is a couple of years old, but still, it seems self-evident to me that there's not been the sort of progress that you would consider remotely acceptable.
Oh, well, because reasons I bring this up are I'm reading the new Jim Crow right now, and sort of with the, militarization of the police and with war on drug laws, with those being implemented, did that increase the murder rates, homicide rates around being African American?
We've also done articles about how many people are victims of police-induced homicides, if you will. The Guardian now is doing some work on this, which is very good, called The Counted, is a project that they can follow their Twitter account. This data just didn't even exist, really, right? There were estimates that included maybe about a third of the deaths that were actually occurring. So I'm an editor now as well as a writer, and we think when a story occurs, is this a quote-unquote random act of violence, or is this representative of some broader trend? And I think these stories about police brutality, it's uncovering things that have been going on for a long time and that are very common experiences, right? And so this is a story that we think is worthy of our coverage. But yeah, just getting that data, all types of data on crime and criminality is often very fraught because, one problem is that if you're not there observing the crime, you might not record it. If you over-police, you might have a surge in crime.
Right.
But, something as fundamental as how many Americans are killed by police every year, there's not very good data on that.
You said it's more in keeping with places that experience vast disorder. The words vast disorder, I found that to be really powerful. Maybe vast disorder is the right term for the experience of black folks living here in the United States, right? That is their reality. So that's that. When you said those words, it kind of struck me.
Yeah, and again, I don't know that I have the standing kind of say this as a white person. I've had my own encounters with police at times, but from what I think the data says, it's a common occurrence not to be killed by a police officer, but to have incidences where they're going up to and over the edge all the time, right? And now that we do have video cameras everywhere, it's not a coincidence that all of a sudden, now that we have means to record these things, all of a sudden these things crop up all the time, right?
Desiree, I remember a couple months ago, you put something on Facebook about police brutality and this kind of insistence among some people to talk about it not as a racial issue. And you were kind of incredulous about this.
I think that a lot of that was cropping up quite repeatedly. I mean, I think we're talking a lot about race right now, which I guess is good. It's so funny. This is but I think just across the board around the country. I mean, I'm living in London. People are talking about it more there too. They always come up to me and go, "What's wrong with your country?" And I'm like, "Okay, well,
in England they say that to you."
It's interesting because it's like you guys got some stuff wrong too.
I know. Europeans love telling me
we have all the bullets. So,
exactly.
So it makes a difference.
You may want to kill a lot of brown people and black people, but you don't have the access to do it.
It's this. Exactly. I feel way safer there than I ever do here. I know the police are actually doing police work
and they
not
don't
just
have guns.
Yeah, and they're not just showing up to give me a hard time. I mean, or whatever else.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do find it really interesting that it always wants to, at that time someone was trying to sort of go like, it's all about, economics and class and all this other stuff. And
You're like, Marxist for 5-year-olds, I get it. You
but we built our class system on race. Like that's what we used to like power it. So we can't, obviously we've got to talk about them both together, but like no one's thinking, oh, this is a poor black guy I'm shooting in the back. Do you know what I mean? They're just like black scary bang.
Right.
And that comes from a very, very early point, and all of the sort of cultural indoctrination we do to people about, who's safe, who's not, what we cleave to, all these other kinds of things.
Nate, maybe we can do a Katie Halper Show 538 co-study, because I'm a hard worker. And I'm not that into math, but I do like stats more than and logic and geometry, so I'm open. But what I've always been curious about is, it seems to me like you could be a black person or you could be a mentally ill white person. And if you're a mentally ill white person, then you're treated like a quote-unquote sane black person. Because it seems like the most horrific police brutality instances that happen to white people, they're often mentally ill, homeless white people who kind of are denied, to some extent, the white privilege that...
Well, generally data around crime, race, especially being black, dominates other considerations, right? It's not a case where, it's outweighed by gender or class. Mm-hmm. So that inference you're making, I think, is probably right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right. So I guess maybe that could be a inspiring note to end on. There could be some kind
black
of
people
solidarity.
Are crazy white people.
Yes. Black guys, racists, just think of black people as crazy white people, and then actually you won't treat them any better anyway. So we're going to have to find another way to do that. But guys, tell us where we can find you online.
At Ted Alexandro.
And we're going to see you. I'm going to follow you through every... Can I be a roadie through your 30
please.
cities?
Yeah,
I'm going to be the
company.
roadie. I'm officially announcing it. I'm the roadie for the Ted Alexandro, Jim Gaffigan comedy tour, 30 cities.
30 cities starting
July 15th.
July
By the way,
15th.
because I'm a native New Yorker who never learned. I just want you to know that.
Nice.
Desiree, where can we see you? Not just this weekend at Tar Baby, but where else?
I'm at Des the Ray at all the social media stuff, and my site is DesireeBurch.com.
And Nathaniel?
So my site is 538.com. The number is spelled out. My Twitter is at NateSilver538 as a number. So it's confusing.
That's like you.
Thank you.
Genius.
You can find me at Twitter, Gabe_Pacheco.
And we will be back at the Katie Halper Show next Wednesday from 6 to 7. And we'll be talking about the war on drugs, actually. And it's going to be a great show. Check us out, FwdRad.io, 99.5 FM. We also have a Tumblr now, and we're on SoundCloud. So go to those sites. Thank you, Reggie, as usual. Thank you, Camille, as usual. Thank you, the Young Lords, because I don't believe in God, but I like the Young Lords. So I'm going to start using them instead of the Lord. So, oh, the Young Lords. Oh, the Young Lords have mercy. Thanks, guys. See you next week.